welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. I'm Carol Livingston, the owner of Dynamics Connections and your host of ISV Talks. And I'm introducing on this call Julian Schrenzel from DyNexus Recruiting. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be here.
So, could you introduce yourself, Julian? Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your company.
Absolutely. So my company is DyNexus Recruiting and Staffing. It was founded by my father in 1997. So it's been around, what is that, 27, 26 years now that it's been here. I personally started working in recruiting in 2006. And since that time, I've just kind of kept going. And today I am president, CEO, and owner of DyNexus Recruiting with a mission to solve the problem of finding the right talent at the right time in the ERP mid-market space. And that's what we do.
Awesome. And I know you have a staffing component. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So what we do really, we kind of do two things. So DyNexus on one side, when a company has a need to fill a full-time permanent role, they need a person on their team as part of their team. They can engage us and we give a guarantee that we are going to find the right person for them, and we go out and we do that. So that's the recruiting side, and you just mentioned the staffing side. So the staffing side is when a company, for whatever reason they may have, they're not looking to hire a full-time permanent person, but they need what I like to call a pinch hitter to come in and know exactly what to do and have the experience and knowledge and aptitude to come in and fight a fire and do exactly what they need done. I have a lot of contractors as well that I put out on projects, and I provide a very reasonably cost, extremely talented and effective contractor to come in and do what needs to be done right now. And that's what you would call my staffing practice.
Okay. And so who do you work with? Are you working with as customers in the mid-market ERP space? Are you working with, Microsoft partners or VARs?
Yeah, so we actually started in the Microsoft space working with partners. We expanded that naturally to other ERP products to include Sage Intacct and Acumatica and Epicor and Infor and just a lot of different mid-market ERP products, including CRM. And then from there, what actually started happening is VARs would start referring their own clients over to us to be able to help them. The client needs a business analyst that is an internal person that can really work to liaison and find information and package it up for the VAR so they can have a successful implementation. So they were often with the problems that their own customers might come to them, where the VAR is not necessarily the one set up to go out and find them a person. That's not what a VAR generally does. They would bring us in. So, and then when we started doing staffing, that was another reason they would bring us in. Very often, a VAR will say, hey, we have a prospect, and they can't really commit to anything until they have their year-end close and they are short accounting people, or they need their processes documented in a way that we don't really do. You want to come in here and help them get to that place. And we will often go in and get them to a place where they can commit to the VAR, and then things move forward. So today we serve probably, I'd say roughly half and half. It's half partners and half those customers. And by the way, partners can also be ISVs too. So we're serving half VARs and ISVs in Microsoft, in Acumatica, in Sage mostly, and half customers in those as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Because a lot of times ERP projects, you have to take your key personnel off, to work on the project. And so if you can get some help backfilling, a role until the project's kicked off and gone live. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
I think also too, they need sometimes their own internal project manager, right? A customer that is managing maybe lots of system integrations or things themselves, and maybe someone to help with that heavy lifting, right?
Yes, absolutely. That person is not always at the ready at the very moment that they're needed. And when that is a problem, that's what I do. I have a lot of connections with a lot of people that have the ability to step in and do exactly this right now. And that's what I'm often called for.
Yeah, so you and I have a little history. I know we worked together when I was a hiring manager at a local Microsoft partner in the Seattle area there. And so
Right.
we worked together and hiring resources and
Yes, that's right. We have a storied history, you and I.
yeah. So and now you mentioned which products, but what industries do you focus on or specialize in?
So it's really been dictated by the need. So you, for instance, you might know like a lot of the mid-market ERP products have been making great strides in construction over the last 5 or so years. So
Hmm.
this is one example. We don't just work in construction, but as is a prime example, like construction 10 years ago, there really wasn't a thing that was really focused on, especially like in Acumatica, in Sage Intacct, those areas. DyNexus is a more mature product. The Microsoft products have been
Yeah.
around longer, and so they have focused there a bit more. But the other ERP products have really started to catch up in those serving those industries better and better. The nonprofit industry has seen a lot of growth in the more recent years. Construction, manufacturing, distribution. These are all areas that are growing because
Yeah.
their functionality is newer. So yes, so we've worked in every industry that ERP covers, which is pretty much across the board, everywhere you could
Yeah.
be, financial, fleet
Yeah.
management, services, hospital, healthcare, everything.
Right.
It, we're not really focused on an industry. We're industry agnostic because ERP by its very nature touches every piece of the business. And those businesses are in every industry. So that's really been the focus. But I would say like there's been a lot of construction more recently has been a big one, and manufacturing has been a big one since that's
Yeah.
been growing. And I
Okay.
think post pandemic, with supply chain, with cloud ERP being a necessity after the pandemic, things like supply chain and resource management in those
Right.
industries of manufacturing and construction and all that have been a natural place where we've done more work than we had before.
Yeah. So when people reach out to you, they might be in a specific industry, and so they need someone with manufacturing background or construction or even not for profit.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Like right now, if
yeah.
I think about our current clients right now, one of them is a CPA company and they're doing full on like their CPAs and financial core, and they focus on the finance and accounting side. I've got another company that's a hotel management
Mhm.
solution where they need people who have that experience and that towards that industry, hotel hospitality kind of
Sure.
industry. We have another one that creates widgets, physical things. So they're in the discrete manufacturing, and they're going to
Mhm.
really have that manufacturing distribution side. So really like it's really very much a smattering that kind of evenly
Yeah.
distributes across a pretty broad
Yeah.
spectrum.
Well, that's good that you have a portfolio of talent in those specialties. So that's great. What are some of the challenges, Julian, that you're seeing with partners, ISVs, or customers in filling their resources? And either it's a need in ERP or maybe CRM.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that I'm seeing today is how quickly this economy is moving. We've had for most cloud-based ERP solution providers, COVID was a time of growth, right? Because every company realized, oh my
Right.
God, we don't have what we need. We can't work with this old system in this way when everybody's remote and our supply chains are all disrupted and coming from all over the place. So they found that they needed a lot of different things. And what happened then is the talent became very expensive because there were less people in cloud who understood the modern technology and modern workplace. And so there was a distinct lacking of talent at that time. And when you have a high demand and a low
Right.
supply, your prices are raising, right? So over the last 5 years, 4 years, talent prices have skyrocketed, right? They did that big time. And then over this past year, things started to kind of change and cool off a little bit. And with the unknown, the competing forces of the economy, people saw an economy that was not as surefire as what it had been before. And they're like, whoa, okay, let's do more with less now. We've got a lot of people, a lot of human power in
Yeah.
this company. And so when that leveled off a bit, salaries also leveled off a bit. But then again, it depends on the industry, on the sector. Like if in construction, for instance, things are you're not seeing that kind of slowdown. So those demand is very high and salaries still remain high. Yet in some of the other industries, you can start to see that change. It's like an ocean where you have an inlet where you've got these competing currents, strong currents, creating a lot of turbulence and churn. Depending on where
Yeah.
you look in the industry, you're going to see different things. And so I come back to the challenge that people have in hiring right now is some people, job seekers, are expecting a lot of money. Some hiring people are expecting not to pay that much money. And then so you have these kind of mishmash of expectations from an
Right.
economy that is constantly churning and churning.
Yeah.
And that to
Yeah.
me seems to be one of the biggest things that people have is that mismatch in expectation, but also with the evolution of a remote-based economy, a lot of
Yeah.
people are not relocating a family from one place to another is not a requirement that I see very much anymore. Like that was years ago that was generally asked. I still get it now and again. People would like need to have someone in the office. I see that, but by far and away, it's all remote. You may have like we'd love to have someone in the East or Central time zone because they can work these hours, not those hours,
Yeah.
or we have clients on the West Coast, so we need this consultant to be here. But it's not like we need them within commuting distance because it's just not what it
Yeah.
used to be in our industry, especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, even customers are working remote themselves, so it's not like, you can schedule an office appointment. They'd have to come into work too, right? Or into the office. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're right, 100%.
I do understand what you're saying about the mismatch on expectations, but it seems like, at least on the partners that I talk to, is that they're very busy. But I've also seen some shrinking on the staff, maybe had more people than they needed and, are kind of doing more with less. So,
Yeah, I see that there's a few trends that I'm seeing out in the channels. One of them is acquisition. There's a whole lot of acquisition going on, and you've probably seen it in the news. There is consolidation and acquisition that's going on pretty heavily at this point. In my conversations with partners over the past 12 months, I find that there are those distinct partners who are going as strong as they were through COVID. They are just growing like crazy and they can't keep up. And then there's the owners who have seen things back off and it's been a lean time for them. There's like these two, it seems like I've had rarely talked to someone and say, it's been pretty good, a little less than it was, but still pretty good. I
yeah.
don't hear that. I hear it's been nuts and we're going crazy with growth still and trying to meet the demand, or it's been a real challenge. And, we haven't seen the
Yeah.
growth. We haven't closed our pipeline that we were hoping. We don't have the pipeline we were hoping over the past year. It's been a reduction and we're doing a lot more with a lot less now. It's like one or the other, it seems. It's not really a middle ground that I see.
Yeah, recently I did a survey out on LinkedIn just to say, hey, it seems like partners on the channel are busier. Is it because people are on vacation? Is it, just have more work or they have less staff? And it's almost half and half. They have less staff and have more work. So,
So yeah, I think you're seeing evidence of kind of what I'm seeing too.
yeah. What are the alternatives to filling a position? If you're not using an outside recruiter, what's the alternatives?
You can always, and yet there is plenty of success of people using the traditional methods still, going through Indeed or one of the other job boards or LinkedIn, right? Those are the pretty typical ones. And I think that there's definitely success there without a doubt. But I also think the reason that recruiters exist still is that if it were as easy as going out to Indeed or LinkedIn and posting a job, and then you got all the perfect people who come in, and all you got to do is just interview the right one, and then you got a perfect person. Like that's just not reality. You can have
No.
situations where that can happen, but the reality of hiring is that you've got a lot of people out there in the world. There's a lot of people out there, and it is easier nowadays than ever for a job seeker to just get their information out. Dissemination of information, as we all know, there's so much information out there, and some of it's helpful and some of it's not, and that's not limited to any specific data. That includes resumes and people applying for jobs. So it's one thing to post a job, but what often happens in that case is that the person who posts a job now becomes a full-time resume looker through her. And they've got stacks of profiles of resumes and emails and stuff like that to get through. And a lot of times in our industry, there's not that kind of time. Like, you don't have time to do that. There's too many things to do. So unless you got all the time in the world to devote to that and make it awesome and then hire your person, you may be served in using a resource, an outside resource like a recruiter. The other way people do it is through hiring contractors. So a lot of times when they may not need a full-time resource and they want the advantage of being able to have the person hit the ground sprinting, not have to learn the industry or learn that technology or learn the proprietary systems that plug into that system or learn how to talk to the CEO of the client that they have who is in a particular industry. They just need that to work right now. They can go in and do that. And one of the good things about that is when you hire that person and you don't need them anymore, you just don't use the hours anymore and then you're free and clear. Whereas if you got an employee, now they're benched or you're needing to retool them and stuff like that. So there is the advantage that you can have in using a contractor. And those are the ways that a lot of people are working. And I also see another thing happening in the industry, which is providing certain services, certain talent as a service. Like, for instance, Jeremy Patoka, sales leader.
Yes.
It is a great example. Like, his company has grown significantly in the last 3 years. I think they just turned 3, but they've blown up in this industry and they provide pre-sales as a service. And I think that I see that starting to happen more and more, like aspects of the job of the delivery being done by external companies as a service on a subscription basis or some kind of modified hybrid subscription basis. So that is yet another opportunity that I think is out there that can happen.
Marketing as a service, that's another one,
there you
right?
Go. There you go. Exactly, Carol. That's right.
You need a full-time person, but you need someone with marketing expertise. So
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if there's any other trends that we kind of talked a lot about, trends kind of sprinkled throughout, but what are you seeing, versus past recruiting practices?
Like, what's changed in the recruiting business?
Yeah, what's changed?
So the technology, of course, that's changed, right? I use ChatGPT for image creation. I use it as a collaborator to create job descriptions. I use it to write anytime I'm writing. So the technology being used today in the recruiting process has grown, right? My applicant tracking system, which is a software that tracks my candidates and my jobs, can do a lot more today than it could do a decade ago, in that it has many applicant tracking systems have sourcing capabilities where you don't need to have a job board subscription, but you can use it, and it has ways to find resources and sourcing of resumes and profiles of people without having a subscription to that service anymore. Where I have a job board where I post my jobs on my website, I still have that, but those get disseminated in a much broader way today than they have in the past. So there's just, information gets shared a lot more today. Also, of course, the advent of using a video conference. I rarely, for meetings, I don't really use a non-video conference for interviews or meetings anymore. And so that's changed things. One trend that I do see people using, which I don't, and it's a decision that I made personally for myself and my company, is automating the interview process, having bots do the first interview. I don't subscribe to it. I don't, because I think that the human connection is the thing that is irreplaceable in this industry for just looking at recruiting. But I would also extend this to consulting and to my customers. There are certain human elements that should not be, that just can't be, that you can't, I don't see them being replaced.
The
I can't say
intangibles, about, the person, how they respond, and
Yeah, exactly. I think when it's a numbers game, like a lot of recruiters will work in a way where they're just flinging resumes, right? And when they're doing that, they're just the company agrees to see resumes and they try to get them in as quick as they can. In such a case like that, it makes sense in the business model to automate
Yeah.
as much as you can so that you're doing so much more with so much less because you got to beat out the other recruiters in getting the right person to the customer, right? But you cannot take time to get to know someone, to get to know the culture of the company. You've got to just be quick at it in that model. But I think that in the long run and in the grand scheme, I think that that does a detriment to our business community at large. When you make the first impression anybody ever gets of the opportunity that you're putting in front of them is a bot that's asking them preset questions and recording them answering them, how can you ever create a possibility with a job seeker
Yeah.
who's looking for that opportunity? How do you create spark possibility within them? Like that is a human to human connection that I don't think, I don't
Yeah.
know, I mean, prove me wrong in the coming years, but I don't believe that a system,
Yeah.
a computer system can do that like a
Mm-hmm.
human can with another human being. And that to me is what's irreplaceable. That if it's just automated, like we'll eventually, you won't need us. But
Yeah.
if it is about that connection, that authentic human connection, I don't think we're replaceable in that way. And so that's why I believe in it. And that's why I don't automate that process. I don't
Right.
automate anything that has to do with the human
Yeah.
touch in order to give my clients the
Yeah.
true benefit.
And it does seem like, networking is still a game changer for most, employers as well as employees, right? Potential future employees is networking. And, sometimes it's making that right connection at a conference or having a long time relationship with somebody makes a big difference.
Totally does.
What can candidates do to, I guess, get your attention as a recruiter or potential employers?
So probably one of the biggest things, if I had to say one thing, there's a lot of things and I don't want to drone on about it, but I'll give you one really key thing for job seekers. Today, it's not about the volume, the how many resumes you get out. You can't flood the field and expect to have good results each time. It is about, again, the human interaction. So what I would say is a resume, for instance. There is no good resume for everything you might apply for.
Right.
Each time you have an opportunity that exists with a company, there's a hiring manager who's looking for something specific. They're looking for an individual with the right stuff. And if a general resume will never do as good as a resume that was built for the reader, for that reader, for that opportunity. And when they do that, that is what gets you in front of someone. And that's what you really want is if you can get in front of a human being and make an impression yourself, that's where it's all at. And if you can get there. So the trick is how do I get that
Right.
one-on-one connection? It's not by blasting your resume to 300,000 boards. It's about finding the opportunity you want, going out there, looking on LinkedIn, who am I connected to that knows this person? Is this person like a county big brother, big sister that I
Yeah.
was too, that I can go and say, hey, it was really awesome that you were a big brother. So was I. Just anything like that, like you can establish those connections. That's what it takes today in order to be able to get to cut through the fray.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. I used to say looking for a job is a full-time job, and it sounds like it still is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I agree. I agree. Yeah. And I don't think
yeah.
automating, especially automating communications, like for job seekers that are on LinkedIn, like there's a lot of ways, like I get you probably too, a billion messages a day via LinkedIn, and almost every one of them are just junk. You can tell they were
Yeah.
written by Chat GPT, or you just know they weren't. In fact, here's a key that you can do on LinkedIn. I put a period at the end. I learned this from Candace Edelin, who runs Propel Growth, but she
Yeah,
puts a
she's
period
awesome.
at the end of her first name, like dot space Edelin. And so mine is Julian dot Trenzel. And so when I get a message saying, Dear Julian dot, I know it's not a real person. So it's kind of a way to like weed out the people that I know are
Right.
automating versus people who are
That's a
writing
good
for
tip.
authentically.
Yeah, and a lot of times the messages is like, I'm not your target. I don't, have anything to do with that industry. Like, why are you reaching out to me? So obviously you haven't looked at my profile or my company.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep. Yep. That's
yeah.
the big key.
So at what point should an organization look to use an outside recruiter? And how do you help companies with that process?
I think that if a company is finding that they don't have the resources internally in order to run the full process, which is heavy, from posting the job, creating a compelling job description, posting a job, looking through all these resumes, interviewing people, vetting them out. If they don't have the onboard person who can just spend their day doing that,
Yeah.
then it's usually one of the executives. And then my big question is like, is that the best use of your time? Are you working below your pay grade? Could you be adding value more than being a recruiter for your company?
Mm,
Usually the answer is yes to that. If they're running the company smartly, an executive should not be sitting there being a recruiter. And they would
yeah.
gain value from allowing that executive to do what they do best and bring on someone
Yeah.
who knows how to do this. So that's what
Yeah.
I would say is if they find that they have more value in using their resources in other ways and allowing the person to do who does it professionally to do it externally, use a
Yeah.
recruiter.
Yeah. And a lot of companies have their own internal recruiting team, right?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So they
Yeah.
like to see that leverage first. But I know as a hiring manager, you're like, I need to find, somebody that's specific in this role or this industry or this skill set. And they don't always, they kind of are generalists, right? They're looking for
Yeah.
people that, have a degree or, you know, have experience in the industry if that's on the requirement. So it's really hard and tough to leverage internal resources because they don't seem to have that sense of urgency that a hiring manager has, right?
Sometimes
So
that's true. And sometimes the recruiter does not have the special expertise to find a specific
mm,
role. Like if you have an IT recruiter who doesn't, an IT recruiter won't necessarily know how to hire an ERP professional because they don't
right.
understand ERP and the business model and the needs and all of the things that are proprietary to this industry we work for. So
Yeah.
in such a case where a company is big enough to have their own recruiting department or people, there is a advantage to understanding, okay, what are the roles they're really stuck with? Get those out of their way. Let them do what they're good at and let them fill those roles and outsource the stuff that's not that they lack the expertise to really do well. And that's also valid.
Yeah, and I think that there's sometimes, well, we'll just kind of go through and use our own resources, and then there's a delay on getting that position filled. And that can be some opportunity costs. Like, not only are you spending your time internally, the highest and best use of your team and your resources, but also just in terms of getting the right person, that you need.
Yes.
So let's kind of just shifting gears first. I just wanted to just share that, hey, audience, Julie and I are partnering together. We're very excited about working together because, I get that question a lot. Like, hey, do you know anybody that can do this or that sales that's been in the channel? I need a consultant that knows F&O or Business Central, and I know a lot of people. But I don't focus on that. I'm not a specialist in that field in recruiting. I was talking with Julian and we kind of have a lot of common network and companies that we serve. So it
Yep.
just made a lot of sense. In the tight labor market, like you said, people have that gap. There's specialties needed. You need people that can fill in on a staffing basis or full-time permanent. So can you talk a little bit about our partnership and how
Yeah.
that can serve the community and the channel?
Yes. Yes. So the problem has been forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever finding the right talent at the right time in an industry that is starved for talent and then has more demand than supply. It's been the truth in the mid-market ERP ever since I began and ever since my dad started the company. So forever. But what I think is neat is organizations like yours. Your goal is to be able to provide resource and empower the people who are part of your community to do better what they do, to have more success and to grow and to scale or do whatever it is that they want, to become what they want within this industry and do and have success by their own measure. So in doing so, what you have traditionally been doing, providing opportunity for learning, providing opportunity for connection and community. But what is new in this case is creating a ecosystem of providers who can provide them with the services that you wouldn't be able to do just as yourself, right? So in my case, hiring the right talent at the right time. You get requested because people come to you looking for answers and looking for solutions to their problems. And you can give them certain things. But now, with the partnership that we have, this community that you have created can now have a resource who is dedicated to going out and seeking the talent, the people, the human beings they need in order to solve their human resources problems or shortcomings. And that is the kind of collaboration that I think is amazing. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it is not done as much as it should be. And I think this partnership that we're embarking upon is something that's going to be happening more and more in the coming years as people come to a place looking for as a more comprehensive solution comes from organizations like yours. And that's what I think is really key.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people are asking me anyway, hey, do you know
Yes.
anybody? And so, and I don't focus on recruiting, I'm not a specialist on recruiting. So,
right. And you've been able to help them because you're naturally connected to a bunch of people, but
yeah,
this is more of a systematic way.
but
It's like, hey, now we're going to understand what your needs are and pass you
yeah,
over to someone who can really actually do something
yeah,
about it on it
yeah.
because that's what they do for their work.
I like that we can have more definite impact right away for those folks that are needing help, either short term or, on a full time basis. So tell us a little bit about the referral process that we have for if someone comes to DyNexus Connections, what's kind of our process for helping refer people to you for help?
So that process is, so they would come to DyNexus Connections as they would normally. But what we have collaborated on is to create a part of the website where they can go and they can write out this kind of a questionnaire where they can select options and also provide input that allows us to be able to see in a nutshell the basis of what they need. And it's going to ask them questions like, what product are we talking about? Is this F&O? Is this BC? Is this something else? Or is this an implementation question? Is this an integration question? Is this a development question? And then do you need this right away? Do you need this later? For how long do you anticipate the need? Do you see this as a contractor or a permanent hire? And once it asks a series of about, it probably takes 45 seconds or a minute or two to fill out the form.
Yeah, probably a minute or two. Yeah.
Okay. The form gets sent to yourself and me, and then I am tasked with receiving that and being able to get in touch with that person to be able to ask any other questions that I may need. And then I can provide them, be that advice. If they are just looking for information, I guide them on their way. Or if they need resources that I could share with them, here's what I think I can do to help, and offer them a solution. And that they can make the choice. If they want to pursue that solution, great. If they just want information and ideas, that's fine too. And so it actually gives them a concrete pathway to a solution.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people are just, generally networking, but I like that we can offer them something, tangible to help them in that hiring journey. Because a lot of times people are out there just doing it on their own, trying to network. And I appreciate that. I used to have to do some of that on my own too, but it makes a difference if you have someone like Julian. And the reason I really valued this partnership is Julian knows our channel, right? He knows the Microsoft channel, the ERP and CRM players. They've been around a long time, so they do know people and have options for you. And if anyone wants to reach out to DyNexus, they can just go to my website and fill in a form under the Dynamics Connections website. So go to dynamicsconnections.com, drop down to the resource tab, and then you can fill out a form, and that will get routed to me and to Julian to help you start that process. So is there, I guess, just to kind of wrap things up, Julian, is there kind of one final trend you're seeing that's driving partners or customers to come talk to you?
I would say yes. To dovetail on what you just said, I want to make sure people understand that doing the process, filling out that form is not a commitment to anything. They are not committed to paying
Definitely.
anything or engaging in any way. It is
Yeah.
simply a resource for them to have an option, to understand here's what we can do
Mhm.
to help you if you're interested. And then once they're interested, then we engage in something. But it's really just a no risk option to be
No
able to get
commitment.
it.
It's just another resource to start, as an option, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as far as like good partners and customers who are coming to me today, like I said to you, there are those partners who are growing like crazy and that are doing a lot more than they can do at this
Right.
moment. And those are the
Yeah.
ones that I'm hearing from, obviously,
Yeah.
as they look for opportunities. I think that people don't work with DyNexus when they're looking for just a ton of resumes and they're looking to just get a whole bunch of resumes and do it opportunistically. They come to DyNexus when they recognize that they need something because it's going to provide them value. They need a successful result and they need it
Right.
done well, right? They don't come to
Mhm.
me when the risk is low and they could, if I'm lucky, I can give them a hire and then they benefit. They come when they know they need a result. And that's the time I'm hired because I talk to a lot of people that I don't work with. And that's for both
Yeah.
their decision and my decision that this company is not serving everybody. It serves those
Mhm.
people who are ready to engage in a relationship where they know what they need and they can rely upon us to provide them that value.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you, Julian, for being part of our ISV Talks video today. And I enjoyed our conversation and learning about what you do and how you do that. Also, showing your expertise in recruiting and seeing what the trends are. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Thank you to you and Dynamics Connections for having me on today. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
Julian's information, if you want to take a look here at Julian's information and reach out to him. Julian, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So my direct email is a great way to go. So that, as you can see here, it's JULIANS, as in Samuel, at dynexusgroup.com. My direct phone, if anybody wants to call, I am also available that way. Can be reached at area code 206-466-1342. And of course, go to my website, dynexusgroup.com. You are also welcome to browse contractors on my website. I have everybody up on my website. If they went to hiring, what is it called? Hirers, and then down to staffing, you can click the button to see staffing profiles and you can take a look at what I have. But of course, I would recommend everybody go to Dynamics Connections because it's going to allow us to gather the key information that we need in a quick way to be able to really meet your need. So thank you so much, Carol, and the community for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. And friends, we'll see you on the next episode of ISV Talks. Bye bye, friends.